forgotten outpost. The stars above the small human colony were quiet. No ships moved across the black sky. The colony, named Eden's Hope, had been forgotten by most of the galaxy. It was far from Earth, on the edge of known space. No one important lived there, only farmers, miners, and families trying to live simple lives. The people of Eden's Hope had always believed they were safe. Wars happened far away, and powerful alien empires fought each other without noticing a small human colony. Children played under the twin suns. Old men told stories about Earth even though none of them had seen it with their own eyes. Life was slow. Life was peaceful. Until the night the sky burned. It started with a hum in the air. The ground shook. The stars above the colony twisted as strange ships dropped from the sky. They were not human ships. Their black metal skins looked like crawling insects. The invaders were the Drevaks, a cruel alien race known for wiping out small colonies to steal resources. They believed humans were weak and easy to crush. The Drevaks came fast. They landed without warning. Buildings exploded into fire and smoke. Families ran, grabbing only what they could carry. Soldiers tried to fight back, but their weapons were old, no match for Drevak armor and guns. The colony's leader, a woman named Captain Harrow, knew they could not win. She gave only one order: send a distress call to Earth. But the colony's main communication tower was destroyed in the first attack. Only a small emergency beacon remained. It was weak. It was old, and it had to be activated by hand. A young boy named Eli volunteered. He was just 15 years old, but he was fast and brave. With smoke filling the sky and Drevaks hunting through the streets, Eli ran. He dodged fallen beams and broken glass. He ignored the sounds of people screaming behind him. All he could think about was reaching the beacon. The emergency tower stood at the edge of the colony, half buried in the rocky ground. As Eli ran toward it, a Drevak soldier spotted him. A blast of energy hit the ground near his feet, throwing dust into the air. Eli stumbled but kept running. He reached the beacon, smashed the cover open, and slammed his hand onto the activation switch. The old machine coughed and whined. Sparks flew. For a terrible moment, Eli thought it would fail. But then, through the static, a soft signal pulsed into the dark sky. A simple message repeated over and over. Eden's Hope under attack. Please. Help us. Please. Eli smiled through his tears. Then the Drevak soldier reached him. Back on Earth, in a dark room filled with screens, an old technician named Marcus Sato was watching deep space signals. It was a boring job. Most nights nothing happened, but that night something changed. A weak signal, almost lost in the noise, blinked across his screen. Marcus leaned closer, frowning. He cleaned his glasses and listened again. It was a human voice, broken, scared, asking for help. Marcus sat up straight. His hand moved to a red button on his console, a button that had not been pressed in many years. He hesitated only for a second. Then he slammed his palm onto it. Sirens screamed through the building. Lights flashed red. Sleeping officers and commanders jumped awake. Across Earth's military networks, one word echoed again and again: distress. Within minutes, generals and admirals gathered around long tables. Holograms of the colony appeared in the air. Grainy images showed burning buildings and moving shapes. Reports poured in. The colony had no defenses left. They would not survive the night. Many in the room expected long talks. They expected careful planning. But the oldest general, a woman with silver hair and sharp eyes, stood up first. Her name was General Moreno. She had fought in the great wars of humanity's past. She remembered what it meant when someone called for help. "Prepare the fleets," she said. Her voice was cold and full of anger. "Someone hurt our people. They will pay." Across Earth, giant factories woke from their sleep. Old battleships hidden under oceans rose to the surface. Armies moved in silence. Families hugged their soldiers goodbye without words. The world moved as one, because when a human cried for help, Earth listened, and when Earth listened, Nothing could stop its fury. The silent enemy. The Drivaks thought they had won. They moved through the ruins of Eden's Hope without fear. Drivak commanders laughed as they destroyed human homes and tore down their flags. They believed no help would come. After all, Earth was far, and humans had become soft. The galaxy had changed since the old wars. Many new alien races had risen, and they thought humans were nothing more than a fading memory, a broken people too tired to fight. They could not have been more wrong. While the Drivaks celebrated, Earth was already moving, far above the blue. Oceans and green lands of the homeworld, giant ships stirred in hidden hangars. Fleets once built for wars that shook entire galaxies came alive again. Commanders who had trained in secret for decades received their orders. Silent messages were sent to deep space outposts. Old codes buried for centuries flashed across the stars. Humanity had not forgotten how to fight. They had only been waiting for the right moment. In a cold command center at the edge of the moon, General Moreno stood before a vast window, watching as dozens of warships lifted off the surface. Their engines glowed like angry suns. Every ship carried soldiers, pilots, medics, engineers, and weapons that the galaxy had not seen in years. Ships shaped like swords, daggers, and shields formed into tight groups, each one ready to strike, without mercy. Moreno did not smile. She did not celebrate. She only gave one order: reach the colony and make them regret. Even as Earth's forces moved, no public messages were sent. No threats were given. There were no loud warnings, no proud speeches. The response to Eden's Hope was not built on pride, it was built on something older and deeper. It was built on rage. Meanwhile, the Drivaks grew careless. They set up camps around the broken colony. They hunted the few humans still hiding among the rocks and forests. They believed there was no danger left. A few prisoners were kept alive, including Captain Harrow, but only because the Drivak leader, Commander Verlik, wished to show them off as trophies. He dreamed of parading his victory across Drivak worlds, using the captured humans as proof that the Drivaks were now masters of this part of the galaxy. He did not know that he had already sealed his doom. Days passed. The Drivaks grew lazier. Their patrols thinned. Their guards grew slow. They laughed and joked in their alien tongue, speaking about how easily humans broke under pressure. They talked about turning Eden's Hope into a Drivak outpost, a place to launch attacks deeper into human space. Then, one night, as the twin moons of Eden's Hope rose into the sky, the first human ship arrived. It was small, almost invisible, and it stayed high in the atmosphere. From it, tiny drones dropped silently toward the surface. They were the size of birds, and they moved like shadows. The Drivaks never saw them. The drones mapped every building, every patrol, every guard, post. They listened to the Drivaks' plans. They watched where prisoners were held. They counted every enemy. Within hours, the human fleet had a full picture of the enemy. General Moreno received the data on her personal screen. She studied it in silence. Then she turned to her officers and gave the simple plan. Strike fast, strike hard, save every survivor, destroy every enemy. The Drivaks still had no idea that death was coming for them. The night before the attack, Commander Verlik stood on the highest tower of Eden's Hope, looking out over the ruins. He felt proud. He had crushed a human colony with ease. Soon he would be promoted. Soon he would be famous among his people. He laughed, not knowing that high above him, human ships were already locking their weapons onto his position. He turned to his guards and told them to prepare for a speech. He would speak to the Drivak soldiers at sunrise, praising their victory. But the sun would never rise for them. Far in orbit, human ships powered their main engines. Hundreds of small attack pods lined up, ready to drop through the atmosphere. Inside each pod, a human soldier sat quietly, armored and ready, gripping weapons built for only one purpose: destruction. When the first attack wave launched, it moved, too fast for Drivak sensors to detect. Streaks of fire cut through the sky. To the Drivaks on the ground, it looked like the heavens themselves were tearing apart. Commander Verlik turned his head confused. For a moment, he thought it was some strange weather. Then the first explosions shook the ground, and everything changed. The silent enemy had arrived, and the Drevaks were not ready. The gathering storm, the first explosions tore through the Drevak camps like angry thunder. Towers crumbled, alien soldiers scattered like frightened insects. For a moment, there was only confusion. The Drevaks had never expected a counterattack. They had never imagined that humans would strike with such brutal speed. High above, human ships darkened the sky. They moved without sound, like giant shadows crossing the stars. Their engines hummed low and deep, a sound more felt than heard. Attack pods rained down, hitting the ground like falling meteors. Inside each pod, human soldiers burst out the second they touched dirt, moving with sharp precision, their armor gleaming under the pale moons of Eden's Hope. General Moreno watched, everything from her flagship orbiting far above the battlefield. She spoke calmly into her headset, giving orders that sent waves of destruction through the enemy ranks. Her face was stone. Her voice was ice. She had no room for mercy. Not after seeing the broken colony. Not after hearing the weak distress call of a child begging for help. This was not just a rescue mission. This was judgment. The first wave of human soldiers cut through the Drevak lines like fire through dry grass. They moved fast, never staying still. Their weapons were designed for close combat, brutal and efficient. The Drevaks fought back, but they were slow and scattered. They had grown lazy from days of easy victories. Now they paid the price for their arrogance. In the center of the ruined colony, Captain Harrow sat in a metal cage, bruised and tired. She had lost hope days ago. She had watched her people fall. She had believed no one would come, but when the ground shook and the Drevak screamed in fear, she lifted her head. She saw shapes moving through the smoke. Tall figures in heavy armor, the flag of Earth stitched proudly across their shoulders. Humans. They had come. Tears filled her eyes as the soldiers broke open the cages, freeing her and the other prisoners. Strong arms lifted her up. Calm voices promised her safety. She clutched the hand of the soldier, helping her, unable to speak, her heart pounding with a mix of shock and relief. All around her, the battle raged. Human drones zipped through the air, marking targets. Precision missiles slammed into enemy strongholds. Every movement was careful. Every shot counted. They were not fighting for glory. They were fighting to protect their own. The Drevaks, realizing they were outmatched, tried to regroup. Commander Verlick screamed orders calling for reinforcements. He ordered his troops to fall back to the colony's old administration center, the strongest building left standing. It did not matter. Earth's fury was already here, and it would not be stopped. As the Drevaks retreated, they left behind their wounded. They abandoned their supplies. Human soldiers moved quickly, securing prisoners and saving civilians first. Every rescued life was another reason to fight harder. Every freed child fueled the storm of rage that drove the humans forward. Above the battlefield, human ships moved into new formations. Heavy carriers opened their bays, releasing wave after wave of smaller fighters. These ships dove low, strafing enemy positions, their engines roaring like beasts of old legends. Drevak tanks were torn apart by plasma strikes. Command centers were turned into craters. Still, the humans did not bomb everything. They fought with care. They protected the innocent. They rebuilt shields around the surviving parts of Eden's Hope, using portable barriers. They defended every human life as if it were the most precious thing in the galaxy. The Drevaks could not understand it. They had grown up in a world where strength meant crushing the weak. They had never seen warriors fight with both rage and love. They had never faced an enemy who fought not for conquest but for family. And so they broke. Small groups of Drevak soldiers dropped their weapons and fled into the forests. Others tried to hide inside the wrecked colony, trembling as the human forces closed in. Some begged for mercy, shouting promises of surrender in broken human language. General Moreno received the surrender signals but gave no reply. She was not ready to end the battle yet. Not until every survivor was safe. Not until the Drevaks learned what it meant to awaken Earth's fury. Inside the command tent of the Drevaks, Commander Verlick raged. He smashed screens and kicked over tables. How had this happened? How had a weak colony called down such terrible wrath? In his pride, he had thought Earth would never care. He had thought wrong. Across the colony, the storm gathered strength. Human soldiers moved deeper into enemy lines, their steps steady, their hearts burning with purpose. They did not fear death. They did not fear pain. They fought for the boy who had sent the call. They fought for the farmers who had planted crops under twin suns. They fought for the simple dream of peace, and nothing in the galaxy could stop them now. The first strike, the Drevaks had never seen a real human assault before. They had heard old stories, of course. Tales of the ancient wars where humans had torn apart empires much larger than their own. But the Drevaks thought those were myths, exaggerated by frightened aliens. Now, as the ground shook under their feet and the skies burned with human firepower, they realized the truth. This was not a myth. This was reality. And it was worse than any nightmare they had ever imagined. The first coordinated strike came just before sunrise. Human forces had spent the night cutting off escape routes surrounding the colony like a tightening noose. Now they moved in all at once, hitting from every direction. Squads of human marines stormed Dravak bunkers, moving like silent shadows. One moment the Dravaks stood guard, laughing and boasting, and the next, they were dragged screaming from their posts. Every move was planned. Every attack was measured. Humans did not waste energy. They did not leave openings. It was like fighting a living storm that thought and adapted faster than any Drevak mind could follow. Above the colony, human fighter jets soared low, their engines howling. Precision bombs struck only enemy targets, leaving human shelters untouched. To the Drevaks, it felt like the very planet had turned against them. Fires erupted across their camps. Supply lines were shattered. Communication towers collapsed into smoking ruins. Inside the old administration center, Commander Verlick barked desperate orders. He called for reinforcements from the nearest Drevak fleets, but there was no answer. His messages vanished into empty space. Unknown to him, human forces had already jammed all enemy signals. No help was coming. They were alone. Panic spread through the Drevak ranks. Junior officers abandoned their posts. Soldiers dropped their weapons and ran. But there was nowhere left to run. Captain Harrow, now free and armed with a salvaged Dravak rifle, fought alongside the human soldiers. Despite her injuries, she moved with fierce determination. She had lost too much to sit back and watch. Her people needed her. Every step she took was a promise to those who had fallen. Beside her, human soldiers fought like a single living machine. They covered each other. They advanced without hesitation. The bond between them was stronger than any armor. It was built on trust, loyalty, and a shared rage that burned in every heartbeat. As the human assault teams closed in on the administration center, Verlick made his last mistake. He ordered his elites to make a final stand, believing they could hold off the humans long enough to escape through hidden tunnels. He did not understand that humans had already mapped every exit. They had already sealed every path. The final battle for the center was brutal. Drevak elites trained in vicious hand-to-hand combat clashed with human marines in narrow hallways. Blades met rifles. Claws met fists. Blood stained the broken floors. But humans did not break. They pushed forward, step by step, room by room. Even when wounded, they kept fighting. Even when surrounded, they fought harder. Because they were not fighting for medals. They were fighting for family. Verlick, seeing the battle lost, tried to flee. He ran through secret corridors hoping to reach a hidden landing pad. But when he burst through the final door, he found himself staring down the barrel of a human rifle. It was Marcus Sato, the same technician who had first heard the distress call on Earth. He had requested to join the first strike. He had left his quiet desk behind to stand here, to be part of the answer. He looked at Verlick without anger, without mercy. Just cold determination. For Eden's hope, Marcus whispered. The rifle roared, and Verlick fell. With their leader dead, the remaining Drevaks surrendered within minutes. They dropped their weapons, raising their clawed hands high. They knelt in the dirt, trembling, waiting for the humans to finish them. But the humans did not strike down the helpless. They rounded up the prisoners, locked them in makeshift cages, and guarded them carefully, because even in fury, humans remembered who they were. They were protectors, not monsters. Across the colony, the fires slowly died. Medics rushed to save the wounded. Engineers began repairing the broken shelters. The surviving families of Eden's Hope came out from hiding, blinking at the strange light of hope after so many dark days. Captain Harrow stood atop a broken wall, looking out over her home. It was scarred and battered, but it was still standing, thanks to Earth, thanks to the soldiers, thanks to the boy who had risked everything to send a signal. Eden's Hope would live. General Moreno's voice echoed through every communicator. Phase 1. Complete. Prepare for evacuation. Protect the civilians, and let the galaxy watch. Because Earth's message was just beginning, and the galaxy had only seen the first strike. The Drevaks begged for mercy. The smoke still hung heavy in the air as the human soldiers secured the last corners of Eden's Hope. Fires crackled in the ruins, casting long shadows over the broken colony. But now, for the first time in days, the screams of fear had been replaced by the cries of relief. The survivors hugged each other tightly, weeping not from sorrow, but from the overwhelming feeling that they had been saved. The Drevaks, once proud and cruel, now sat huddled in cages, stripped of their weapons and armor. Their heads hung low, their eyes full of fear. They had believed humans were weak. They had believed humans would run or hide. Now they understood the terrible truth. Humans were not weak. They were the storm, the fire, and the fury all wrapped into one unstoppable force. Word of the defeat at Eden's Hope spread fast, even faster than the Drevaks could have imagined. Through smuggler routes, trader ships, and secret transmissions, news of Earth's retaliation raced across the galaxy. Drevak colonies, once full of confidence, suddenly grew quiet. Commanders who had dreamed of further expansion now sent desperate messages back to their homeworld begging for guidance. On the Drevak homeworld, panic spread like a disease. The High Council of the Drevaks, a group of ancient leaders who had ruled for centuries without fear, gathered in a hidden chamber deep beneath the surface. The old stone walls seemed to close in on them as they argued. "This is not the humanity we knew," one counselor hissed. "They are ancient beasts, awakened again," said another, his voice shaking. Some spoke of surrender. Others whispered of building bigger fleets, creating stronger weapons. But none dared to say the truth out loud. No fleet they built, no weapon they crafted, could erase the shame of what had happened. They had poked a sleeping giant, and now they trembled before its gaze. Back on Eden's Hope, General Moreno gathered her commanders under a large tent set up among the ruins. The mood was grim but steady. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. Every officer knew it. Every soldier felt it deep in their bones. "The Drevaks will either beg or break," General Moreno said, her voice calm and certain. "We will give them a choice." Soon after, a single human ship, painted in the deep blue of peace missions but armed to the teeth, was sent toward the nearest Drevak fleet still lurking near the colony. Aboard the ship was a simple message, broadcast in every known Drevak language. "Surrender your leaders responsible for the attack on Eden's Hope. Lay down your weapons, or face the full might of Earth." For long hours there was no reply. The humans prepared for battle. Fleets moved into attack formations. Missile bays opened, plasma cannons charged. Every human soldier knew they were ready to finish what had been started. Then, finally, the Drevak fleet answered. Their message was weak and broken, filled with static and the sound of pleading voices. "We surrender. We surrender. Please spare us and we will hand over those responsible. We beg for mercy." It was a sound few humans had ever heard from a Drevak, the sound of true fear. The surrender ceremony was held in the open fields outside Eden's Hope. Under the watchful eyes of human soldiers, Drevak commanders were marched out one by one, their hands chained behind their backs. Their once shining armor was now cracked and dirty. Their proud faces were now pale and hollow. The civilians of Eden's Hope gathered to watch. They stood together, shoulder to shoulder, showing the Drevaks that they were not broken. Old farmers, wounded children, tired mothers, and hardened miners stared silently at the captured invaders. They did not cheer. They did not throw stones. They simply watched, their silence heavier than any weapon. Captain Harrow stepped forward to receive the formal surrender. Her body still ached from her injuries, but she stood tall, her head high. When the Drevak leaders dropped to their knees before her, she spoke only a few words. "Earth remembers," she said. "We protect our own." With that, the Drevak leaders were taken away to face justice. The other Drevak soldiers were forced to help rebuild the damage they had caused. They worked under heavy guard, repairing homes and planting new crops. It was not just punishment. It was a lesson, one that would spread across the stars. Earth's response had not just been strength. It had been honor. It had been mercy where none was deserved. And that, more than any weapon, terrified the galaxy. Far away, on worlds that had once laughed at humanity, leaders now sat in silence, rethinking their plans. Merchants changed their routes to avoid human space. Old enemies sent cautious messages of peace. New allies reached out with trembling hands, hoping to stand with Earth rather than against it. The humans had spoken through their actions, louder than any words. And the stars were listening. The last battle deep within the heart of Drevak space, the homeworld of Kravax, stood silent. It was a planet of cold mountains, dark seas, and black metal cities built into the cliffs. It had never been touched by war, never been burned or broken. The Drevaks believed their homeworld was untouchable. Now, it was next. General Moreno stared at the rotating image of Kravax on the screen inside her warship. Around her floated hundreds of human ships, each ready for the final strike. Behind them stretched the longest human battle fleet seen in 100 years. Old dreadnoughts from forgotten wars flew beside new stealth cruisers. Ships once used for training now carried real weapons. Even retired captains had returned to their stations, drawn by one simple truth: Earth had unfinished business. The surrender of the Drevak fleet near Eden's Hope had not ended the war. It had only revealed how deep the infection went. Intelligence reports showed that the main Drevak Council had approved the attack. They had even watched the early destruction of Eden's Hope through hidden channels, laughing while humans died. They believed they were safe, far away on their cold throne. They were wrong. Earth had given them a choice: surrender the Council or face justice. No reply had come. So now, Earth was coming for them. As the human fleet entered Drevak space, alarms lit up across Kravax. Panic spread faster than light. Thousands of Drevak ships scrambled to form a defense line. Dread filled the air. Even the most loyal Drevak officers whispered that this might be the end. On the surface of Kravax, the council met in fear. The chamber that once echoed with proud voices now rang with silence. They argued, blamed each other, but none dared send the surrender message. Pride chained them. Fear of weakness blinded them, and so they waited, hoping their fleets could stop the storm. They could not. The battle began with a single strike. A human stealth ship slipped through the chaos and destroyed the largest Drevak communications array. At that moment, the enemy was deaf and blind. Then came the full assault. Space lit up with fire. Human warships tore through the defense fleets like blades through paper. Their missiles were faster, their tactics sharper. The Drevaks had numbers but not the will. They fought with confusion while humans fought with purpose. Fighter pilots from Earth danced through the stars, dodging lasers and striking with deadly precision. Each explosion sent shockwaves through the Drevak ranks. Dreadnoughts cracked open like eggs. Escape pods flew in every direction, but many were caught in the crossfire. On the ground, human drop teams landed on the outskirts of the capital city. Their boots hit the soil of Kravax for the first time in history. The Drevaks tried to resist, setting up last-minute barricades and turrets, but they were too late. The human squads moved like fire, sweeping through buildings and clearing every street. Captain Harrow was among the first to land. Though still healing, she had insisted on joining the final mission. Her rifle in hand, she led her team toward the council chambers. Beside her marched elite human operatives, silent and focused. Meanwhile, in the main city, civilians screamed and fled as the capital defenses fell. Many had never believed humans would come this far. Now they watched their mighty towers fall to fire and smoke. The ground shook as orbital strikes turned military factories into glowing craters. Inside the chamber, the Drevak Council could no longer hide. Human forces had surrounded the entire building. General Moreno herself arrived at the front steps, stepping down from her command shuttle with a dozen elite guards. The doors of the council hall opened slowly. The councilors stood there, dressed in fine robes, their faces full of fear. One by one they dropped to their knees. The war was over and they knew it. General Moreno looked at them, her face hard and unreadable. "Your actions brought war to our people," she said. "Now, we end it." The councilors were arrested without a single shot fired. Outside, as the last Drevak stronghold surrendered, human soldiers raised the flag of Earth over the Capitol Tower. The same flag that once flew over Eden's Hope now waved high over the heart of an empire. But this victory was not about revenge. It was about remembrance. Earth had not come to conquer. It had come to protect its own and make sure this would never happen again. As the dust settled, human engineers helped Drevak civilians out of collapsed buildings. Medics treated the wounded, no matter their species. Water and food were distributed to the helpless. Earth had struck with fury, but now it offered something else. Peace, through strength. From space, drones captured the scene and sent it across the galaxy. Billions watched in silence as the images appeared. The human flag, the surrender of the Drevaks, and the unity of human soldiers helping even their enemies. The message was clear. Do not hurt humanity, because if you do, they will come, and when they come, they will not stop. Not until justice is done. A new warning to the stars: the war was over, but the silence that followed was louder than all the battles combined. The Drevak Empire, once feared across half the galaxy, was now on its knees. Its war fleets destroyed, its leaders captured, and its homeworld scarred by fire and regret. But in that silence, a new voice rose, one that would echo across the stars for generations to come. On Eden's Hope, the colony that had started it all, survivors stood together as reconstruction began. Broken homes were rebuilt. Shattered roads were cleared. The fields were planted again with trembling but hopeful hands. Soldiers who had fought for them now helped them carry supplies and fix damaged shelters. There were tears, yes. There was pain. But there was also pride. The people of Eden's Hope knew something now that no one could ever take from them. Earth had heard their cry, and it had answered. The boy who sent the distress call, Eli, sat in the middle of the town square, with his arm in a sling and a warm blanket around his shoulders. He didn't speak much. He didn't need to. The people nodded at him as they passed. Some placed hands on his shoulder gently. Others just smiled with tired eyes. He was no longer just a boy. To them, he was the voice that awakened the sleeping giant across the galaxy. Races that had once mocked humans now watched the broadcasts in silence. News of the final battle on the Drevak homeworld spread like wildfire. Images of surrendering Drevak leaders, of human soldiers lifting children from rubble, and of the Earth flag waving high above an alien capital were everywhere. The message was clear to all who saw it. This was not the humanity of old tales. This was something stronger. On the bridge of her flagship, General Moreno stood quietly as her crew worked around her. She looked at the stars ahead, her face unreadable. She had led the largest military action in a century. She had brought Earth's fury to the heart of an empire. But now, her mission had changed. It was time not just to end a war, but to send a warning. A special transmission was prepared. It was sent on all frequencies in every language known across civilized space. No encryption, no tricks, just truth. The message was short. This is Earth. We heard one child cry for help, and we answered with everything we had. We did not come to rule. We did not come to conquer. We came to protect. If you threaten our people, we will find you. We will stop you. And we will never forget. If you come in peace, you will find friends. If you come with war, you will face the full strength of Earth. Remember Eden's hope. Remember what we are. The stars listened. On distant mining colonies, human workers stood a little taller. On trading ships, captains replayed the message again and again. On diplomatic stations, alien ambassadors watched, in silence, their hearts filled with a strange mix of fear and respect. Even the enemies of Earth who had stayed hidden until now chose to remain in the shadows. None were ready to face that kind of power. None were ready to test humanity's will again. In the years that followed, Eden's hope became a symbol, not just of survival, but of what could happen when one voice reached across the stars. A statue of Eli holding the emergency beacon was built in the colony center. Beneath it, a plaque read, "One voice can shake the stars." Earth's fleets returned, home, but they did not sleep. The ships were cleaned, repaired, and upgraded. New alliances were formed, new colonies were secured. Earth was not just protecting its borders now, it was watching, listening, and preparing. Not for war, but for peace that could not be broken. Captain Harrow returned to Eden's Hope and took charge of the colony again. She walked the fields every morning, speaking to the people. Her scars remained, but so did her strength. She told the children's stories, real ones, about bravery and sacrifice. She reminded them that being human didn't mean being perfect. It meant standing for something, even when the stars turned dark. General Moreno retired not long after the war. She refused medals and parades. Instead, she left quietly, returning to a small home by the sea. But those who had served under her still whispered her name with deep respect. To them, she was the sword of Earth, the one who rose when no one else would. As time passed, stories were told. Some were turned into books, songs, even holographic plays. But none of them changed the truth. Earth had been underestimated. A single cry for help had awakened something ancient, something powerful, something unbreakable, and the galaxy would never forget it.